Hey, this is More Than Velocity, and this is the second part with Backyard Baseball. We've got both of the founders on today. We've got Kyle Bogies, and joining us again is joining us this time is RC Orland, and he was on vacation, but glad to have him back. Definitely wanted to do two parts because they've got some players that we want to specifically talk about some of the improvements they've been making, and kind of what the program and what gains they're seeing and why. And I think it's going to be a good one. We're going to talk about pitchers, and we're going to talk about utility players and why ArmCare works for both. And it's going to be interesting. So Jordan, I don't know if you want to set it up or what are you thinking here?
Yeah, obviously, Kyle already has run through his intro. So let's go ahead and get RC on his, kind of give his background as a player, a coach, and kind of how he got involved.
Perfect. Yeah, I appreciate the intro there, guys. Again, my name's RC Orland. I went to Deep Run High School in Richmond, Virginia. I was drafted late, 40th round to the Dodgers out of high school. Chose to attend UNC Chapel Hill instead. Played there for 3 years. Got to pitch in the College World Series, 2 appearances against Vanderbilt in 2011. Was then drafted by the Nationals in 2012. I tore my UCL the day before the draft. We were pitching at home against ECU in the regional. 2 outs in the 8th. Was about to turn it over to our closer, Mike Moore, who's had a pretty successful big league career.
We know Mike.
Yeah, we know Mike.
Yeah, big fan of Mike. So he actually came to visit last year in January for our first pitch banquet. And so I'm not sure if you guys were with him beforehand or not. But I said, hey, this is something you definitely need, especially as he's recovering and working on that on ramp, back to peak velocity. So I'm glad he's a big fan of the program as well. And tore my UCL with 2 outs. I threw another pitch and looked down at my elbow and said, that's a problem. So again, it was a pretty stressful draft. I was 8-1 with a 2.2 ERA. Had much higher expectations from where I landed. Obviously, when you're getting calls from scouts and saying, "Hey, we've seen your MRI, not really sure what's going on. We're gonna pass." So I wasn't sure if I was gonna get drafted. I got a call from the Nationals. Met with them in DC. Found out that my UCL was torn, and so after my surgery, I was trying to figure out why. What happened, what's out there, what can I acquire, quantitative or qualitative information to figure out what was going on. And at the time in 2011, there wasn't a lot. So my journey of trying to figure this whole thing out was tons of internet searches, YouTube searches, anything that I could get my hands on. And so I learned a little bit, but that kind of started my quest for how this whole thing works. And over the last, I guess we're almost 10 years now, because of the amount of data we have access to, the transition's a lot different, which is great. And again, I get to tell that story of where I was, why I got hurt, and then most importantly, protect players' arms from going through the same experience that I did.
Absolutely. Yeah. So, and you guys have been, I know we talked about it in the last podcast, but you've been running Backyard Baseball for a couple of years, and it's grown into teams now and some other things. And how excited are you about the future of your facility?
Oh man, it's been so exciting. So we'll send you some pictures of the old lab in the backyard. I'm sure Kyle went over this last time, but he gave me a call. We ran a couple of camps together, and he said, "Hey, I want to basically get the gang back together." I was like, "Man, I don't know if I want to go into coaching." And he sent me 2 videos of players, and I saw their mechanics and said, "Okay, I really felt like I was doing a disservice to the players to not get involved, knowing that there were mechanical adjustments that we could easily fix on the fly." And so that's how we got started, in the backyard, and then ultimately grew in less than 2 years to 7,500 square feet, which is really exciting. We ran 19 assessments in November, and that doesn't include the 8 players that joined our 11U team. So we've had tons of growth, and I really think it's because of the information that we give the players so that they can make data-driven decisions for what's best for their career. And you guys play a huge part of that foundation without a doubt. So every player comes through with an assessment, gets cleared to throw, And the first thing we do is check their range of motion, strength, and their scat patterns right away before anything else. So again, to say that you guys aren't a foundation of our success, would be an absolute lie.
And that's every player that walks in the door?
Every player on the team, it's mandatory. It's included in our package. For whatever reason, if somebody said we're not interested in doing this, then they're not a good fit for our program, because we have to put health first, especially on top of the gains that players are seeing at such a quick growth and time period. We have to make sure that their arm's able to accelerate and decelerate healthy, with those gains and that added stress that we're putting on the arm. So again, if we see those strength to velocity numbers in the warning or the red, it's a totally different conversation on how that assessment goes versus just a player, oh, I took 3 weeks off, let's get off the mound and throw all out and see what you got.
So real quick, you said all players get the assessment when they come through. And obviously you're talking about pitchers getting on the mound, doing things like that. It's not just pitchers that you work with. I've had some cool discussions with Kyle going over some position players specifically. I don't know if it's too early to jump into some of that data, but we get a ton of questions about, well, why should I do this as a third baseman? Why should I do this as an outfielder? And I think you guys have a really cool case study and you have some cool stuff to show. If you guys, can we jump into that now, or is that not the right time, Bart?
I definitely want to jump into it, but I want Ryan to just quickly go into why position players need ArmCare. And then maybe you can talk about how it is a little different. The program is a little different for pitchers and utility players. So Ryan, why don't you take that first?
Me or?
Yeah, you.
Yeah. So for position players, it's not really unlike pitchers, and in fact, they make longer throws during a game, and they also in training should be throwing at base distance, or further, if you're an outfielder. The element that's so important for any athlete is to understand, if there is an injury to the throwing arm, what is the future outcomes. And what people don't know, and it's a study that I published a while ago, a few years ago now, I think it was 2 or 3 years ago, is that position players come back worse than pitchers. So most pitchers, at the time, they come back at about an 85% level. That means that they get back to their initial ability. When it comes to position players, it goes infielders, outfielders, and catchers. And the infielders, they're all under 70%. And the catchers are just touching 50%. And so, people don't really realize, whatever it is, whether they lose range of motion during their rehabilitation, or, the throwing demands are greater in some ways. It's really unknown. But we need to prioritize this for position players too. It was an issue we had with the Angels. We had a lot of position player throwing arm injuries, and when I came in, I realized they weren't doing anything. And if they did, the ArmCare was at the end, and it was called a finisher. And the position players at the end of their lifts, they were finished. They didn't do it. So it's a priority. And it follows along the same as pitchers. I mean, you need to have a balanced shoulder. You need to have one that doesn't fatigue. And you have to have one that recovers and bounces back. That comes through having a high amount of fitness in the throwing arm.
That's extremely well said. I'd just like to add a couple comments since you brought up pro ball. At the highest, at the pro ball level, most of the teams take in and out almost every day, or at least 5 or 6 times a week.
Mm-hmm.
So for the outfielders alone, that's 2 throws to second, 2 thirds to third, 2 throws to home, at max effort every single day, with 1 day off a week if you're lucky. And so you compound that with the in-game throws and all the warm-ups. And like you said, it adds up quickly, and it gets very overlooked. I had multiple players just make a couple throws, and we're in the bullpen and just kind of shrug their shoulders and roll their eyes and just say, man, like my arm, isn't where it needs to be. And again, it's because it's not built into their day-to-day life, and it gets extremely overlooked. And then one other thing about the recovery and the on-ramping that you mentioned is we've worked with a couple players that came to us after they were initially hurt. And after they were cleared from physical therapy, their program was essentially done. There were no checkups. There were no programs being built in from the foundational level pre and post. And so, like you said, if they haven't made adjustments to their mechanics and all they did was, strength and range of motion for 3 to 4 months, all that good stuff that they did is now eliminated because you stopped doing it. And so, we've called you guys, our PT in our pocket, and we really get to eliminate, we'll say, the lack of just programming of saying, hey, I was hurt, now I'm fixed, but I haven't changed anything, and I'm not fixing the overall problem.
Yeah, and real quick, just something that popped in my head. I just sent Bart and Ryan a video of my guys playing catch in the snow. We started out, and obviously we're in a bad weather area. We go out there, it's sunny, and our motto where I live is, hey, at 6 to 8 a.m. it's winter. From 10 to roughly 2, it's spring, and then anything after that is just hit or miss, depending on where we're at. So we got out there, it's sunshine and rainbows, everything looks great. 5 minutes into throwing, we're in a blanket of 2 inches of snow everywhere. So with that, we're not going to be able to get outside for a little while. So with that, you're saying these guys are getting in there, they're throwing, they're going, man, my arm's not where it needs to be at. That's where we're putting that priority on, those two-way players, position players, pitchers only. It's like, we got to set a foundation when we're inside and we can't throw past 90 feet for X amount of time to set that strength, make sure we're monitoring that range of motion. Like you said, the PT in the pocket, in a sense, let's set that foundation and keep building. So when we do start making those full distance throws, we're not in a position of failure, but we've set ourselves up for success.
Yeah. And I mean, I'm not a biomechanist, but it seems to me you've got these fielders that are making max effort throws, and they could be moving in one direction or the other. The variability that's going on with those guys when they're making these max effort throws is quite high, or can be, in a game environment. So they have to be strong. They have to be stable to handle that stress.
I'm just going to jump in really quick. And also, like you said, the variability is not just, it's when you're pitching, right? You have your set mechanics. You'll see a third baseman run over, jump, and throw it as hard as you can, almost all arm, just off the back foot,
Yep.
And it's a completely different situation. And the thing is, so with our players, it doesn't matter. Like, I know you wanted to say like differences in the program. There's not. Like, you'll have your differences on amount of, if it's a pitch off the mound versus simulated long toss versus like, across the diamond, across the turf field inside. But essentially their ArmCare is going to be the exact same every time. Or not every time, but based off of how much they threw, the protocol is the same. And to Ryan's point really quick is with the lifting, something I noticed as well is like when people are finished with their lift, they're tired. They don't want to do the accessory muscle stuff with the, ArmCare and the bands and anything like 3-pound weight and less. So we actually build that into their lifts as well. It's like, this is part of your lift. You have to have this done before you can leave.
Yeah.
So I just wanted to throw that in as well.
Well, let's talk about a case study. You were telling us about a shortstop. Let's jump in. Who wants to start? RC?
Yeah, I can start. So there's 2 kids I want to address today. One's an infielder, one's an outfielder. Just so you guys who are listening can get the the whole view of saying, hey, position players need this from the infield and outfield. So we've got one kid out of collegiate in Richmond, Virginia. His name's Hartley Rahman. Plays showcase baseball at the highest level. He's being recruited somewhere in the mid D1 level right now. And as you guys know, for the most part, shortstops are the ones being recruited at the highest level, and then they're the most athletic usually, and they move you around to second, short, outfield, wherever. And his bat's there, but he's been told by multiple college coaches that his arm strength's not there for shortstop, so that's really gonna eliminate him from the left side of the infield. His dad's quote said, he can't shovel the ball to first base right now. And so we came in for a standard assessment a couple weeks ago. Kyle ran through it. It starts off with the ArmCare app. So we go through strength, range of motion, grip strength. Kyle looks at his scaps. We look at his total mobility, ankles, hips, knees, things like that, and saying, okay, is there anything just from the foundational level that needs to be built into his program right away before we even start looking at throws. And then from there, we go through if he's ready for max effort strength. So for shortstops, do either a double shuffle crow hop or a pull down where we see, hey, at max effort, as close to game speed, what are we working with? And then from there, we slow it down to roughly 1,000 frames per second, and then go through, I don't know, probably 20 to 30 checkpoints in the assessment of saying, hey, here's your drift. Are you getting into your back leg? Are your hips opening up on time? Is your top half closed? Is your arm late? Did you load your scap? Your back leg and your front leg both clawing back and into each other, things of that nature. And so Kyle sits down with the kid and the parent one-on-one and goes through exactly everything that we see. And then we build the program out from there with the different drills to fix, we'll say the inefficiencies. And then from there, we compare and contrast velo. And then also we compare and contrast arm strength. So I think we're testing players once every 2 weeks on the ArmCare app. And, Kyle, you can correct me there. So we test them weekly, which I'm a bigger fan of anyway. So just edit out my lie. And he, on a pull down, Hartley came in at 82, made a couple mechanical adjustments, added some arm strength, which we'll show you guys, and pulled down 87 within 2 weeks, which is very exciting. One of the bigger gains we've seen, which is great. But again, it's not just about the gains. It's about the players understanding what they did differently, how to work, understanding the way their body moves. So then this way, when they're not with us training in the lab and they go out and play games, they know exactly what's supposed to go on. The expectations are there and they understand what's going on. So it's great that they see these gains in-house. But if we can't translate that to the field where it ultimately matters most, then it's just not ultimately the result that Kyle and I are looking for.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, real quick on that, we've seen a lot of our Division I programs who were kind of, using the ArmCare stuff last season. They just ran pitchers only. Now this year, they're starting to run position players on it as well. A lot of those groups are going, we want the whole roster on there, because every single coach, whether you're a manager, pitching coach, defensive, whatever it is, you look back and you're like, man, there's that one bang play that turned into a 3-run inning as opposed to getting that out and we stop it. And there's always like that one you look back on and that cost us a game or that cost us a series, that spiraled out of control here. And if you can just go back and change that one thing to where if every guy's throwing 2 miles an hour harder, you're going to convert more outs. If every guy's throwing 5 miles an hour harder, you're going to convert more outs. All of a sudden, instead of going first to third, if you have outfielders that can get that ball into the cut with some aggression, now you have first and second on singles as opposed to first and third scenarios. So you really cut things down to stop big innings when you just have guys that are, number one, throwing harder, and then obviously better arm strength. You're going to be more healthy. So just a random side note, we are seeing a lot more guys build into that on the position player side as well. And, I want to get into that case study, obviously, because it's pretty cool.
There was this.
Sorry, there's just something I want to add on this topic. And it happens a lot in the youth levels, is that there's a ton of two-way players. And that's also something, we have to consider with our athletes, is that they're going to have excessive workload, at the younger age groups. And that's just one of the things I love about what you guys do, is that you're developing habits for these kids, so that they can maintain arm strength. And especially if they slide out of being a pitcher and they go back to shortstop or, another position that's going to have kind of more high traffic with making plays. So I do want our listeners to know this. If you got a kid who's a two-way player, this is essential.
You're exactly right. And just to relay the message one more time for those listeners at home, every player that comes through for an assessment gets the test. It's mandatory. Every player that comes through for the program, it's mandatory. And that's never going to change. But Jordan, sorry, Bart.
I was going to ask how's Hartley and his father feeling these days?
It was good. I sent him a message after the first week and said, "I'm sorry about the bad results. Just let me know where to send the refund." So no, they're pumped. They're here for life. It's been an awesome 2 weeks for those guys. So they're really excited. Before we close the book on outs, Jordan, was there any I guess, translation for how hard O'Neal Cruz is throwing across the infield for college coaches to say, oh, throwing 100 miles an hour across the infield does make a difference? Because I saw some things, on Twitter with the data of the extra outs that he gets from throwing harder. And so I wonder if that's relayed any messages to coaches at home saying, oh, the velocity does make a difference.
I don't know on that end of it. I don't know if it's specifically related to Cruz in general, but I know a lot of guys are going, hey, our pitchers are throwing harder. What's the harm in having my shortstop throw harder or my second baseman throw harder on double plays? Because that people don't realize the second baseman, they usually put him there because, weaker arm, we'll put him over on that right side of the field. You're making tons of throws that need to be fast and quick because there's a sure man and a quick man on double plays. The second baseman in most of those double plays is always the quick man. He has to be the guy getting the ball off quick and aggressive from a feed from short or from third base, or when that ball's coming in from, ground ball over to the right side, first base goes to second base, going back to first base. He's got to be the one who's throwing that ball hard. So people don't really put that into perspective on stuff. And generally they're going to be that lead cut guy on the furthest throws on the field. So they got to be the one with the better arm when it comes down to it. So depending on how you run your cuts and relays, random side note, we could go off on a tangent on that as well. And that's not the purpose of this. But when it comes down to it, we've had a lot of guys coming in there going, yeah, this is a difference maker. And at the pro level, when they're drafting guys that it's like, he's iffy on the bat, but this guy has a cannon from across the diamond, we can always maybe try him as a pitcher later on. I know from the pro level, they're definitely looking at that stuff and they're going, worst case scenario, he throws 100 across the diamond. Maybe we can get 95 out of the mound. So for 100%, they're looking at it on the pro level. I know they look at it to an extent at college. I mean, we had some guys that were at our level play. I know Ryan refers to it as the Ivy League of the West Coast on a regular basis where I was at Vanguard University. But we would take guys in the outfield that had good arms, guys in the infield that had good arms. It's like, hey, best case scenario, maybe they can get an out or two for us if we really have to. So 100% guys are looking at that.
No, you're exactly right. The first person that comes to mind in that situation is Rowan Wick. I played against him in fourth season. I think he was the best hitter I've ever seen at the time. I think he hit like 340 with like 10 home runs in 20 games or something. I thought he was going to be a Hall of Famer. And then 2 or 3 years later, I saw him as a reliever, I think for the Cubs or maybe the Cardinals. So like you said, that's top of mind. Mm-hmm. That's just one person that I saw make the transition to the big leagues from being a position player to a pitcher.
Cool. So who's let's talk about the outfielder you've been working with.
Yeah. So again, I want to see your database to see who's got the strongest total arm strength. His name's Nolan Cruz. He gained 14 miles an hour in 9 months. He's our spark plug at 5'9", I don't know, 190 pounds. I'm probably going to butcher that, and he's going to yell at me for butchering it.
Probably 200, okay. All muscle.
Yeah.
I Looks think like me then.
Exactly. Same guy. I think he broke the Virginia State deadlift record or something at his age.
Yeah, this guy is just pretty much me. Yeah.
Same guy. And so he came in at 74 miles an hour, and his arm always hurt. And so, Kyle basically took him under his wing, and he followed the program to a T. I'll let Kyle go into that in a little bit, but he went from 74 to 88 in 9 months on a pull down. And we'll send you the celebration video of that one at the old lab. It was very exciting.
It's legendary.
Yeah. So Kyle, I'm not sure what he did mechanically and things. I'll let you relay that.
Yeah. So, I mean, one of his biggest things, as it is with a lot of kids, is, they don't get a lot of rotation out of their hips from a certain point. Once they land, they're not continue to rotate and, lead leg lock out. Even from the outfield, you're still going to lock out your lead leg. It helps project the upper body over the front side and really whip the ball through, kind of give you that extra oomph at the end. So he would kind of, what you would say is collapse his back knee or drive it inwards towards the hips. And that's a huge issue we see not only with outfielders and infielders, but pitchers as well. So really working on that was a huge part of it. The other part was just being closed at landing, completely open at landing. his was very minor adjustments, and but the biggest piece of anything is, I mean, this kid was 16 and he set the national squat record with like 595 or something, and he was so tight from wrestling, all these other sports, never stretched. So essentially I was like, I want you to follow the ArmCare protocol pretty much 5 days a week, right? 6 if you can, but you know, it's okay to take 2 days off. We're separated 2 days on, 1 day off, 3 days on, 1 day off. And then just making sure that, you know, you're going through the mechanical part, but his arm was hurt. So I didn't want him to throw. So he didn't throw a single baseball, weighted ball, anything whatsoever. Did this for 2 months along with some mobility work where we really opened up his pecs, really worked on his lats, around like where the teres area is, really getting his flexibility and range of motion. And then we did a 3-week on ramp where we started out with baseballs for a week and slowly built up from like 50% effort at 25 throws, and then incorporated weighted balls to kind of help with getting a little bit more layback. But again, like, you know, every ball has a purpose, if you will. You know, the 2-pound ball, I will never tell a guy, hey, go throw this as hard as you can. That is, like, in my mind, the dumbest thing you could do personally. I think essentially it helps with getting more layback. The weight helps the arm fall back, right? And if you're going through your mechanics, nice, smooth, 50%, you're going to get that layback. And it's almost like a stretch, if you will, you know, through active movement. Now, we did that for another, you know, during that time as well. Finally, we get to the point where, okay, we're going to go 100% today. And I believe it was when y'all came to the lab that to shoot our first like video.
Right.
And he pulled down like 84 on like his first pull down, which is a 9-mile-an-hour gain in 2 months without touching a baseball or like actually training to throw, like, you know, like that, if you will. So he was super pumped. And then we were continuing to work. You know, he had in season, so we tried to just maintain in season. We're not trying to make a ton of gains there. It's maintain flexibility, maintain your weight, maintain your strength, your explosive power, and your velocity. You know, over time, I've learned during the season with traveling and school and, you know, everything that's going on in life, it's really easy to lose, you know, your calorie count, your weight, which turns into losing strength, which turns into, you know, this being off and this being off. So there's so many checkpoints. So that's like a big part. And he was, he was perfect with it. He played a little bit during the summer too. And finally we were like, dude, we need you to come in and train. Like, let's get you ready for college. You know, you're a freshman this year. Like, let's get you ready. So he put in 2 hard months of effort, pulls down 88. And like, we were so pumped, like jump up. It's like a legendary video. And we didn't even like plan that out. It was like timed up perfectly where we both spin around and look at each other like, oh, I love it, man. I get so hyped for him because I will tell you this, like, you know, we've had tons of kids come in here. Nobody, like, I don't think anybody in this world works as hard as that kid. Like, he puts everything into it every day. He will do whatever you say if he trusts you, you know, and that was a big part, is gaining his trust and then kind of helping him lead. And I think, like, more than anything, you know, when his arm was hurting and I was like, hey, don't throw a baseball, that he was like, but this is like, I thought we were doing velocity training. I was like, I am. Don't throw a baseball. And I think it kind of like blew his mind. I was like, do the ArmCare app. So like, y'all have a ton of credit in that aspect, which I thank you for, because not only is he like one of the most amazing players I've ever coached and puts in the most effort, but he's actually becoming one of the best coaches and mentors for the younger players. You know, when they see him working hard, when he goes over and helps them when they're not doing something right, you know, that's what, like, it's becoming, you know, a trickle down effect through him to the next guy, to the next guy. And that's more than I can ask for, because I'm like pushing it towards, like, we together collectively are pushing it towards the next generation of coaches and players, you know.
Yeah, I love that story. That's awesome. I mean, and it just goes to show that you can always be making progress somewhere. And I appreciate you, giving us some credit there, but you understanding what's going on and saying, hey, you're just not going to throw, and we're going to do this, and we're still going to be making progress. That's a huge testament to the type of facility you guys have created there. So you should be proud of that.
Well, I appreciate it. And just in my defense, it's only because I got hurt so many times. Like, I got hurt
what makes
so
good
much.
coaches is not knowing what to do. It's knowing what not to do. That's the big thing.
It really is, man. And I want, when he gets back from college for Christmas break, I need him to come on here. You're going to love him. If you're cool with that, do it for me, please. Like, you're going to love him.
Story.
Pretty much, if you took Rafael Palmeiro and said, like, this is your child, that's what he looks like. He's got like the whole curly Q mullet thing going on with just the stash. It's beautiful. So I have a side-by-side. I'll send it to you, Jordan. You can show everybody.
Yeah, that's awesome. Hey, listen, I'm going to take, this has been awesome. I'm going to put up a lot of stuff on this video and put some links if we can't do them over the lays, so everybody can check this out. These are great case studies. Definitely want to have you guys back on and keep following up and just talking about different things. We touched on a lot of cool stuff there. I'll even link to some, I know we've got some ArmCare IQs that are talking about the Serape infected stuff that comes in a part to that rotational aspect that you were talking about with this guy. And this has been great. So, anybody, Ryan, you got any last words you want to say before we jump out of here?
No, it was great. I love that we're talking about position players, because my throwing arm held me back, and I don't want that happening for them. That's for sure.
Very cool. Well, hey, I appreciate it again. And until next time, take care, guys.